by and large, talent management is the various dimensions that we have been talking about. Uh, we will talk about those, but we will kind of look at it in a more strategic sense today. So, and some of the aspects of what we will cover today, two of those aspects we will again go into deeper detail next week and next to next week, where we will be talking about recruitment from a more strategic perspective, which is a holistic talent management perspective rather than just filling positions. And second is how we engage better, how we engage our employees better, and what is the impact on a more engaged employee base on productivity, on motivation levels, and thereby on profitability and revenue generation. So those are two things we will look at. But today we will again look at the gamut of talent management from a more strategic lens. So right away you start with identification of talent and being very clear on the sort of people you would like to recruit, what are the skill sets you would like to bring into the table, and what is the capability that you would either want to create in-house or you would like to acquire from outside. So this is very important and a very critical stage where you identify talent and you kind of look at it not from a narrow lens of okay, these are the open positions, these are the positions I want to fill. Rather, you look at it from a far more holistic perspective in terms of what are the key skills in the organization, and how do you assess those skills. So you have a choice. You can simply do a regular kind of interview and screen people, or you can do a competency based interview and go a level deeper to diagnose the capabilities that an individual has. uh, Also, next time we would take a look at a competency model. So you can do the identification of talent based on a competency model, which will help you align your hiring to performance management, to talent development, and overall people management practices across the board. So therefore, identifying people, that is a key part of talent management. Then how do you develop those people? So L&D, of course, plays a very important role. Along with L&D, organization development also plays a very, very critical role. So would anybody like to kind of differentiate between L&D and organization development? Yeah.
As per me, as OD more related to change and how to adjust to the your systems to the changes happening, and L&D is growing with those changes in terms of the skill development and learning.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so OD comes with, it's a organizational level practice, and it opens up opportunities for organization level change, while L&D also kind of supports that, but L&D is more specific in terms of capability development, while OD would be a overall perspective in terms of how you know uh, grow people to the next level, how you evaluate existing strengths. So OD is a organizational level a set of organizational level practices, while L&D would be kind of restricted to specific modules, specific interventions. So it's more from a competency development perspective, while OD would ensure either sustaining change or initiating change in an organization. So, for example, you want to have a development center in the organization. So, How do you set up a development center? What is the criteria that you would like to have in the development center to identify talent, grow them, and take them to the next level? So development here encompasses all of those activities. Then once you have done that, when L&D and OD together, uh,
So, sorry, I'm interrupting, Dipankar. So, in that case, an L&D could be a subset which helps in the organization change and development.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely, L&D is
Okay.
a very critical subset.
But then in talent management, would OD be a subset or they are separate? Okay.
See, they overlap. They not necessarily that TM is a subset of OD or OD is a subset of TM, but there's a significant overlap in the sense where basically talent management is your talent handling strategy in an organization. And
Right.
if you remember, we had talked about in our first session, we had talked about the balance scorecard,
Right.
where we had brought in the perspective that earlier organizations were focused on revenue generation
Mm, mm,
and all other practices were secondary. But gradually, there has been a shift globally for large corporations, and they have been moving towards seeing talent as a critical differentiator.
mm,
So, when you see talent as a critical differentiator, and you realize that the kind of talent that you have, that you know helps you or impedes you from differentiating as an organization in the marketplace, then what happens is that you kind of bring in a more strategic focus. And here OD is some of the practices which help you, but talent management is not. OD is an enabler for talent management, but it's not the entire range of talent management activities that you know that we will be talking about. So OD is definitely an enabler, but they do not kind of uh, they are not a subset of either.
right.
Neither is OD a subset of TM, neither nor is TM a subset of OD.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. So then you importantly look at how do you deploy this talent, and lastly, how do you ensure engagement. So engagement is very critical, and you have more and more organizations like you have Gartner, you have quite a few other organizations which are involved in helping organizations engage better. So apparently one important insight is that every point of engagement that you improve through various practices results in about 10% higher productivity. So for every percentage of better engagement is equal to 10% higher engagement. Sorry, 10% higher productivity. So that in itself tells you how powerful engagement is. Because here it is translating into money terms. So if we were to go back to the old yardstick of revenue generation, directly by supporting your talent, you are able to generate more revenue because there is higher productivity, and therefore the revenue generation is better. So having said that, you know, there are some important yardsticks which tell us that why an organization really needs talent management. Uh, Time to time, you realize that there are key roles in organizations, and those roles are very critical for an organization to function well. And if those roles remain unfilled for long periods, whether you want to hire from outside or whether you want to develop talent inside, whatever be the reason, but if these critical roles are not filled for long periods, there is a implication that the organization suffers. There is a consequence that the organization suffers. So I don't know about your experience, but in one of my experiences, there was a CHRO who left, and it took almost 12 months to replace it. As a result, there was considerable chaos in the organization, and the HR function particularly was very poorly serviced. People felt very poorly serviced. Their appraisal was not happening on time. When it happened eventually, it was almost a year kind of behind schedule. The letters would not come on time, so there were significant consequences right across the board. So therefore, if you had a good talent strategy, such a key position would never have been open for such a long time. Any experiences where you have seen key positions lying open?
We are kind of going through it now, Dipankar, in our organization. The CHRO has left for some reason, but however, I must say between two of us, the role has been kind of segregated. So it's a watching period of a year, and I don't want to be boastful, but that this is one of our key roles right now to ensure that at least the current processes don't go haywire. Deadlines are met, processes are followed, are being followed as per the norms, and it is difficult definitely with not a common head on top. But I think we are doing a fair enough job in ensuring the processes run on time. It's a very important role to fill on time, no doubt about
Um, Absolutely.
it.
So then there are multiple situations where if the position is lying open, you suddenly go and hire from outside, and very often what happens is the fit is not good, or there are multiple questions on the emergency hire. Typically what I've seen is these kind of hires don't do very well when there is an emergency hire. You basically just go on the lookout for you go talent hunting, and whoever fits your bill approximately, not really fully but approximately, and perhaps not even approximate in the sense that it's not a 80% fit or a 70% fit, it's much lesser, but you still go and hire because there is a fire, and you need to fill the position. So these emergency hires don't do too well. Then when you keep hiring key roles from outside, that itself is a statement on your organization. So it has two negative side effects. One is that people feel demotivated. They feel that, okay, we are not really fit for the next level. All the good positions are being filled from outside. That's one. Second is the people who come in at lateral stages. They at times do not fit in. So, one of my earlier clients was India's number one car manufacturer, and they have a culture of growing talent from inside. And but once they decided that it was too kind of it is too close ended, in the sense that everybody seems to have kind of been groomed in the same way, so everybody has the same insights, the same way of working, so let's get some talent from outside. So they did an experiment and they got talent from outside, and a considerable number of junior managers were hired from banking, finance, insurance, and other sectors. So it so happened that they discovered that the people they had hired from outside, they left within 12 months. So they were kind of, they were not sure why this happened. Why should people from outside leave so quickly while their in-house managers were doing fairly okay and was spending long stints in the company. So when they did a RCA, they discovered that strangely that the people who had come from particularly the finance sector and even FMCG, they found that they did not take easily to working in a Japanese environment where Saturdays are working, where the time the login time and log out time are very strictly adhered to. There is no flexibility. Then the organization's the hierarchy is flat. So these were things which people did not like, and when they filled those roles from outside, they discovered that people from outside were not fit for this particular organization because of the specific culture that they had. which was okay for people who were thrown inside, but not okay for people who were hired laterally. Uh, So, similar point, the replacements at times are not successful in or some organizations. Some organizations have the very strong culture. I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity to work for organizations which have very strong internal culture. And I won't name a company, but there is a large software company where people generally they go and work there, and either they really love it and they stay there for more than a decade, or generally they leave within a 1 year. So it's not a midway feeling. It's either they really appreciate the place, or they do not resonate with it at all. So so there can be such situations. Then you have complaints about promotion decision fairness. So this is again a pervasive problem. If you do not have a end-to-end talent management strategy, then you can have arbitrary promotions, you can have ad hoc promotions, you can have emergency promotions, and all of this leaves a bitter taste in the mouth for a lot of people. I personally, was working in a very large organization where, having grown internally, I was looking forward to the AVP position, and suddenly they got a person from outside who was, old economy person, who could not kind of be in sync with the various tools that were there, handling the learning management system, so and so forth. And we were really aghast that how could a person who was not well versed with technology be brought in over here, which was such a tech friendly company. So, and that resulted in me and many other people exploring options outside, because we felt that this has been an unfair decision. Uh, Last but not the least is loss of customer confidence. This is very important, and because your customers are constantly watching you, how this organization is evolving. Particularly if it's a listed company, then all your details are there in public. People see who is coming, who's leaving, and things like that. You would have seen in the newspapers when there was a crisis at Infosys. The CEO, two or three CEOs left in quick succession, and now you have the new CEO, I think he's more than a year old now. But there was a loss of confidence. There was an impact on the share price of the company, and that impact was telling people were feeling that Infosys has lost its feet, and it's kind of it doesn't know what to do next. So therefore, in key positions for listed companies, there is a huge impact in terms of what you do with your talent. Okay, I hope it's making sense.
Yes, in fact,
Yes,
one
yes.
of the things which we have faced in certain roles, the current leadership, somebody who's about to retire, they are so larger than life that when we are providing replacements, they try to map it with the same personality. So, like we have an Asia Pacific head of CAM to be replaced. For the last 8 months, we are struggling because they want a replacement of that particular person, and in respective of skill sets and experience, the profiles given are getting rejected. So that is becoming a struggle in itself, filling that kind of a role.
Yeah, that's a very good perspective. Very often, what happens is that you have a larger than life person in a certain role, and you don't know how to replace the person, because consciously or otherwise, we are kind of comparing the new candidate to the existing person, and probably the existing person has grown in the system. He's kind of very influential, he's
Yeah.
looked up to, and he's a kind of bigger than life person. So it kind of seems difficult. How will you have somebody stepping into his shoes? So yes, that's a challenge, and I think what is required is probably a more open mind and more exploratory talent acquisition, where one experiments. If you
Yeah.
again going back to the Infosys scenario, you had the guy called Vishal Sikka, who was larger than life, who was kind of very dynamic, kind of very well-known figure in the software space, and he was replaced by somebody who is relatively low profile, but at the same time, he's proved himself successful.
Mm, right.
Okay, so moving on. So some of the outcome of good talent management, you have top talent identified, which is really helpful. So you have directors, leaders, heads, and senior managers, functional leaders, transformation change leaders, all uh, these key people identified. Now, typically, what happens is, first of all, smaller companies typically don't have a talent management strategy at all, and they hire as the positions open up. Some organizations do have a talent management strategy, and what they do is they focus only on key positions. So not for all levels of of employees. So what you get is, in mostly in organizations where they have some talent management practices, that key positions are identified, and you ensure that there is a pipeline for that particular position. And also, if you have to hire the talent from outside, they already have kind of identified few people as backups who may be there in the market. But uh, if an eventuality is to arise that any of them were to leave, then they would have the backups in place, and they will activate those backups. But of course, not everybody can have TM strategies in place, but those who do typically focus on the top talent, or sorry, on the top positions. So it's very important here to be clear that uh, talent management is a subset of HR. It is slightly different from regular HR practices. So it's really a plan to meet the strategic talent needs of the business and create competitive advantage through differentiating capabilities. And it's not simply that HR will deliver various services, or how HR will introduce HR thinking, or the plan for HR development and recruitment, training, employee relations, or internal activities. So this is a slightly more strategic thing to do. It's not really regular part of HR. So even if you have a fairly robust HR with HR VPs, with good employee engagement practices, it may not necessarily be a result of uh, thought through talent management strategy. Okay, so now one very important thing for talent management to be successful is that an HR practitioner, has to understand the pulse of the business. This is something which eludes HR practitioners very often, and they tend to justify it saying that, I am HR, I am not operations, or I am not sales, or I am not leading the business from the front. I am a back end activity. Now, the closer HR is to the pulse of the business, the closer they are to understanding the technologies that are being used, or the operational challenges that are there, or the headwinds in the market, the better it is for HR. They are more aligned to the business. I was seeing somewhere, in terms of uh, can basically a scenario where you have a HR person for a short while, while there is some issue with the head of operations and the chief operating officer. So the HR head takes over for some time and seamlessly handles the business, and then as things get better, she hands the business back to the operations leader. So that is the kind of seamlessness, that would really serve a business well, where HR can operate as a business head, and probably vice versa as well, where the business head can also be a good HR person. So if you have that sort of a seamlessness between departments in a business, that business will always thrive, and you will be able to integrate talent management in the overall strategy of the organization, and your talent management will also be that much more strategic. So it is like over here we see this visual. It's aligned to the mission, vision, strategy, resources, and management of an organization, and that yields business success. So, any experience where you've seen that HR is seamlessly integrated into the business, and that really helps the business. No such experience. This is a rare experience. So generally, it's difficult to come across such a situation.
I mean, what we do, and Akshay, I was hoping somebody else actually speaks up, is definitely be part of all the business meetings, because without HR intervention, I think even a thing like productivity mapping or how to reorient roles is impossible. We keep track of the financials each monthly basis. There are regular discussions where HR has to be a part of it. Even in a smaller setup like ours with less than 1,000 employees, it is imperative that HR is part of those meetings and can contribute. Even in the BSc ones that I mentioned, we are always part of these discussions and contribute. So we
Okay.
are aware of the bottom line. We know how things are going, where are the challenges, where there are corrections to be made. It has to be part of the business.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I have experienced both situations where it is embedded into the business, it is very aligned, and it becomes a key driver of success. And I've also seen situations where HR is removed from operations and is operating in its own silo, and therefore it is not doing good to itself and it's not doing good to the organization. So, to share an example, we were in a situation where the company was into various businesses. Some of the businesses were low margin businesses, and we were acquired by US MNC, which felt that these low margin businesses were not helpful, and they did not want to continue in these businesses. So we had to divest some important clients. We had to get rid of them, and focus only on high margin businesses. So by divesting, I mean that we actually had to ask about 4,000 employees to move on because we were not interested in sustaining those businesses. And just like talent acquisition is a core HR responsibility, exiting talent is also an HR responsibility. And what we did instead of exiting the talent was that the organization worked very closely with other players in the market who were not averse to handling businesses which were low margin as well. We negotiated with some other businesses. The clients were also in the picture. And basically, what happened was that there was a rebadging of these 4,000 employees. They were handed over to another company, which was quite happy to get the business. And so we actually hived off a business which had about 4,000 people in it. Generally, when the numbers are so large, this comes in the media, people get to know, there is adverse publicity that you get. But HR, business, client, and the new organization which was roped in, everybody worked very closely to ensure that all these 4,000 employees were rebadged into the new company, and they hardly missed a day of employment. Everything happened smoothly, and thanks really to the HR team, which was able to do this quickly and ensure that their PF and their uh, compensation and all the other benefits, etc., was all moved smoothly to the new organization. So that was an exemplary project which HR and operations did very well. Similarly, there have been experiences on the other side where uh, HR operates in its own silo, and they are not able to understand that there are for example, now uh, due to the uncertainty of COVID, uh, I've seen organizations where HR continues with its projections for hiring, for uh, uh, you know reward payouts, and the bonus payouts, etc. While the organization is facing a lot of uncertainty in terms of whether they will be able to retain their clients, whether the revenue projections will be sustained or not. So HR is oblivious of some of those things, and they are continuing with their projections for the payouts, the recognition programs, so on and so forth. So the change that is required quickly for all departments probably is not flowing through the way it should. So therefore, this is a very important HR imperative. Be aligned with the business as much as possible, which at times is not there. But good to hear that Arpita in your company that is the case. So that is how it should be. So moving on, so as I was saying that there are most companies don't have a TM strategy in place. Some companies do have a TM strategy in place, and some companies have a very robust TM strategy in place. So here is a comparison between two types of talent management. One that is exclusive, that is restricted to just a few positions, and or maybe a peripheral talent management strategy, as compared to a more holistic talent management strategy. So in exclusive, you have no particular strategy, while in inclusive, it's a clearly defined strategy. In exclusive, it's a casual or an informal process that yes, these are some key positions. We need to ensure that they are um, filled up quickly if there is a vacancy in any one of those. While in a more inclusive and a holistic TM strategy, it's a more formal process, just like you do appraisals annually, just like you do your planning annually. So similarly, TM is just part of HR planning, and you ensure that it follows a regular cycle. And every time you're deliberating your top talent strategy, every time you're deliberating on how to reward and recognize your key people. So this is a matter of process. It's kind of part of the overall process. Uh, in exclusive, it's limited to a few individuals, while in inclusive, it is open to all employees. And in exclusive, it may kind of look at some areas, but that area keeps changing. While in inclusive, it may look at a large number of specific areas. So typically, many organizations, what happens is, you may have seen this in your organization as well. This is a very common phenomenon, that you tend to have talent management, and you tend to ring fence talent that you have in some key departments. For example, sales. You would not want to let go of the best sales team that you have. Or let's say in manufacturing, you have excellent manufacturing capabilities. So you may want to ensure that they have the best incentives, they are doing well, and they are we are able to retain that particular talent. So you have specific areas where you want to focus, and you uh, have a talent management strategy for those particular areas. So so the larger your coverage, the better it is. But yes, maybe specifically looking at some departments or some parts of the business, and excluding the other parts of the business, is not a healthy talent management practice, because typically people feel that there are special benefits being given out to certain departments, which results in an absence of organizational fairness. Now, organizational fairness is a very, very important criteria which is observed closely, and if it is not present, it results in disaffection and employee demotivation. So, therefore, talent management, if it has to be there, ideally it should be there holistically. And last but not the least, it's closed development for a chosen few, while it's an open, clear process in an inclusive. Uh, so, like I was mentioning, that if it's a transparent, open process, then people really appreciate that. They know what they need to gun for. If somebody is, let's say, uh, not so good performer, but he is very aspirational. He wants to grow to a excellent performer. So he or she will know that if I do XYZ, then I can be a top talent. And if I am a top talent, instead of 3 years it takes for me to get a promotion, I can get it in 4 years. So people can be aligned to the organizational rhythm, that this is what we offer to the top talent, and this is how you can maneuver your way around if you aspire to be a top talent. So both from an employee perspective and from an organizational perspective, there is an alignment, and people know it's a clear, open, transparent process. Any experience in either of those kinds of talent management? Anyone?
So yes, hi Dipankar, Pallavi this side. Yeah, so
Hi, Pallavi.
yeah, so the organization to which I have worked, yes, I have seen both exclusive as well as inclusive. So talking about the multinational organization, uh, or a big organization such as HDFC Bank or ICICI Bank, which I have served, I've seen that yes, there is a proper talent management, team is there, and talent management pool is being created for all level of employee, including the branch staff or the operations or for. So talent management is a regular process in these organizations. Whereas there is one more organization to whom I have served, I will not name. So they were not planned as far as talent management was concerned. In fact, I have seen that at times it happened that some key positions, I will not say the topmost position, but yeah, those were certain key position of the departments, and those people left, and there was not proper planning being done, and the position was vacant uh, for more than 2.5 or 3 months, or at times 4 months also, and which actually impacted the entire performance of that department. So yes, I do agree that both type of in an organization, both type of conditions are applicable, inclusivity as well as exclusivity of talent management.
Right, Pallavi, thanks for
Yes,
sharing. And
thank you.
like you rightly said, that there are consequences, which unfortunately very often we don't understand, or when it is happening, we don't really have a damage control measure in place. So, but it
Yeah.
happens all the time, and there isn't kind of an antidote to it other than end-to-end talent management process kicking in when you lose good talent.
Yeah, in fact, the organization which I'm mentioning was into training only, whereas they did
Okay.
not manage the talent appropriately. So when the director was about to retire, that particular L&D director was about to retire, neither he prepared their juniors to take over the position, nor the external hiring was being focused upon. So, and that actually made the reason that a particular department was forced to close in a span of 1 year time, and then it was being outsourced by the organization.
Okay.
That was the consequences. Yeah.
Wow, that's a very severe consequence.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, ironically, it also so happens that these processes are missing from the very departments that are supposed to be champions of these processes. So, For example, I was in an organization where the mandate was that we had to have very strong employee engagement processes. We had to improve the motivation level in the company. We had to have very robust internal communications, and all this was led by HR. And so all the other departments were more or less following the norms laid down, except for HR, which internally there was no communication, there was very little motivation, and hardly any engagement. While this department was accountable for ensuring all of this in the rest of the organization. So those are ironies that are always there. But good, thanks, Pallavi, for bringing that out. Okay, so moving on, let's look at a talent strategy framework. So where does it start, and eventually where does it go? So first, you have business outcomes. You look at business specific imperatives and objectives linked to business success. So every business plan has a people dimension. So let's say if I am in Facebook, and Facebook has decided that okay, we want to focus a little bit on AI. Now, if you want to bring in AI, what do? You bring in talent which is well versed in AI. So now your hiring plan will need to include skill sets which are associated with AI. So what are the business outcomes you are looking at? Similarly, if let's say we say that we productivity per individual has to increase. So gradually, for example, I was in an organization, we felt that the productivity per individual is low by industry standards, and we need to enhance the productivity per individual. So the policy that was followed was kind of a bit adventurous, but it was decided that for certain profiles, particularly lower level profiles, we will outsource these profiles. So they will not be on our headcount. They will be with team leads or Adecco or any of these headcount supplying companies. While we will focus our employment, our regular employees to be above X grade. So which will result in uh, the revenue generated per employee to be higher, because the full-time employees in this organization, they are of a higher grade from what they used to be earlier. And of course, side by side there were other strategies, not just this was the only strategy. The other strategy was how to kind of get into higher value projects, how to um bring in talent at price points which were lower but ensure higher productivity. So all those were tied in with the business imperative of having uh, higher revenue per employee and higher productivity per employee. So that had a very strong impact on your talent strategy. So as discussed, when you have any business objective, mostly it has some bearing on your talent strategy. So, whatever you may have as a business strategy, you will definitely need to plan the corresponding talent strategy that you would like to have. For example, this company that I'm talking to, another of their objective was to be among the top 50 companies in their particular industry by 2025, which meant that they had to expand their revenue base by 3x, and therefore also hire the right skill set for high-end engineering projects, not regular basically the you know the low-end civil engineering projects, but more strategic civil engineering projects like complex bridges, then underground tunneling, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the talent that you had to bring in was also now needed to be more talented from organizations like NICMAR and IITs and other higher end engineering colleges. So therefore, your talent outcomes became different, aligned to the business objective. Now, when you talk of the talent outcomes changing, also the metrics will change. So, what are the qualitative and quantitative data that measures current performance against outcomes? And now you need to bring in new metrics when you have new business outcomes. So the people metrics will also change in terms of the hiring mix, the performance evaluation mix. So those will also be changing as per the business requirement. So as I mentioned earlier, you could get civil engineers from the lower end colleges, from the smaller engineering colleges, but with the product mix changing, you had to bring in people with more complex skills or more complex abilities, and therefore your hiring and talent acquisition strategy would also change. Maybe it would be you had to uh, budget higher expenditure, because then you would need to have a significantly larger outlay for CTC, because higher talent comes at a higher price point. However, given the fact that you are in higher margin business, so therefore that will be offset by the growth in revenue. So one has to look at that. Very importantly, you have to also now identify different behaviors. For example, if I am moving from a low margin business to a higher margin business, so therefore my project managers, my key um, stakeholders with who are interfacing with the client facing positions, all of them now need to scale up, because you are dealing with a higher revenue generating business as compared to what you were dealing with earlier. So therefore, your talent management has to be that much sharper. Your L&D has to ensure that either you develop those existing people to the next level, or you hire people from outside. So your L&D and talent management both have to talk to each other, because now the behaviors that you're targeting are higher level of behaviors. And again, going back to that particular organization, it so happened that their project managers were used to a certain kind of behavior which was more transactional, a bit casual. But now, once they uh, were climbing the value chain, their project managers also had to understand the nuances of finance, be able to talk uh, a more PNL related conversation with their client stakeholders. And also, because side by side they were going global, so they had to globalize in their mindset. So that was also very, very important. So ultimately, we must remember that any business is basically a set of behaviors. So what are those behaviors they're bringing to the table? That often defines the sort of revenue that you're generating as your top line. Making sense?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. And last but not the least is that now how do you enable all of this? You have these four horizontal boxes. Now you enable all of this through various programs, various tools. For example, the nine blocker, which we will look at again. You have various HR programs. You have the top talent program. You have various other tools to drive the needed behaviors. So you these are the enablers which will ensure the other four things on top. So how robust are your programs? What are the tools you're using? For example, uh, there are organizations which use development centers very extensively, and they use these development centers to nurture their top talents and ensure that the top talents feel uh, top talents, they are appreciated, they are given more opportunities, they are given more feedback to ensure that these people are able to make a huge difference. Now, statistically, it has been shown that it is in an organization, uh, the value that employees bring to the table, it's like a Pareto. So 20% of your employees are generating 80% of the value. That, uh, well, some people may not like it, but that is the truth. That you have a disproportionate number of people who are bringing a higher volume of value to the organization. So is this framework making sense?
Yes, yes, Dipankar. In fact, I do agree that not only here, in any walk of life, the Pareto principle is very much applicable. So only 20% of the people bring 80 more, 80% of the productivity. Rest 20% productivity comes by
Yes,
And
Pallavi, I was just being a bit reluctant because it's a principle which is not very democratic. Because according to the principles of democracy, we like to believe that everybody is equal. But truth be told, at the organization level, that is not something that we witness regularly.
in fact, with this crisis happened in March, April, those 20% popped up again. So we know who to approach to will get the job done. It repeatedly comes out.
Yeah.
Dipankar, from the last class, we had discussed more about skill mapping, also about skill identification and gaps. Can you share a format later on an easier format, maybe, which to help in skill mapping, how we can just put it across if there is any format available?
Yeah, sure. So actually, next session will be on talent acquisition. So the
Okay,
entire session will be on skill mapping, talent
okay, okay.
acquisition. So no worries.
Right.
So moving from the framework, this is what the process really looks like in terms of how we manage talent. So first of all, it really starts with the strategic intent. Without the right intent, I don't think anything can happen. So first of all, the intent has to be strategic. It can't be transactional. Next is, once you're clear that you want to nurture X number of people in X departments in X number of talent pools, then you identify the key capabilities that are required. My sense is that it's important to focus on capabilities rather than on people, because the process, ideally, any good process needs to be impersonal. It should be customized wherever possible. It should have the flexibility, but all processes, to be good processes, need to be impersonal. So we identify the key capability requirements that we are looking at, then identify the talent pools, where do we want to invest, which are the pools which are very important, and then you look at developing, deploying the talent, the right talent. So that's critical, how you, whether you're deploying the right skill set, the right experience in the right place. So the fitment has to be correct. Recently, I came across somebody who is who's like at a manager level, but he was ensuring a key transition from a client side to our company's side. And I discovered that though he was a manager, but he had the maturity of a very senior leader, and he ensured a seamless transition, which was very admirable. At the same time, in another similar transition, we had a very senior person who was overseeing the transition. And what we discovered was that he was the senior designation, but he was extremely transactional. And for the smallest of things, he would escalate to 20 people. And, so uh, one realized that there was, while you had a lot of maturity at a certain level, you had a lot of absence of maturity at a more appropriate level. So it was a very poor alignment of capability and challenge in the organization. So talent has to be deployed in the right place in the right way. That is very critical. And motivation and retention. This is again very important in the sense that uh, we have read about motivation theories, and McGregor's theory says that you you have two sets of motivators. One is hygiene and one is the differentiator. So hygiene is something which everybody expects. If it is there, nobody really thinks great about it. But if it is not there, then people are very upset. Which means like hygiene is like good pay, payment dispersal at the right time. Suppose one is expecting the salary to come in on the first of the month and it doesn't come in by the 10th. People are extremely unhappy. But if it comes by the first as it's supposed to, then nobody says thank you. But similarly, the differentiators are where if you get a additional recognition by the company for maybe serving the company for long, or for executing a project well, or going the extra mile to achieve a business target. So all of that will really make an employee happy and motivated. So the hygiene factors and the differentiators both have to be there to ensure motivation and retention of talent. And then a fair evaluation and review cycle, which ensures that the best are recognized and the others are given the right feedback. And so that the like we were discussing earlier in inclusive and exclusive, that it's a open, transparent process. Openness and transparency always helps ensure that there is fair play, and fair play results in higher employee satisfaction. Okay, moving on. We were talking about tools and programs. So this is a very important tool which allows you to ensure that you recognize people both on the basis of performance and potential. So we had I think only Arpita and Pallavi were there, and yeah, some of you have seen the video. So most often uh, companies evaluate people on the basis of performance, but if we bring in the potential dimension also, then that allows us not only to identify our top talent, but also who is a valued specialist, who is a solid contributor, who is an emerging potential, and who is a rising star. So basically, that allows you to have a more robust talent management, because a nine blocker basically gives you a good insight into how people are shaping up. Who needs to be attended to, who can kind of be given quick growth, who needs more support and nurturing, and which are the profiles or individuals who probably are under a scanner. And if they are not able to shape up, then probably they could be exited, or they could be given other opportunities which are which may enable them to perform. So this is a very useful tool. And similarly, tools and programs ensure that you are able to have a very robust talent management program. So I'm forgetting the name of the program, but Genpact used to have a very robust program where people were given quick promotions, and they could be catapulted to the top, within a shorter span of time than what regular employees were expected. So there was a significant attention given to the top performers. Okay, any thoughts so far? Uh, I hope this is fairly clear. All quiet.
Yeah, the Pankaj, as we had discussed, fairly clear.
Okay, great. So some
Dipanka, just one query for the
yeah.
solid contributors. What kind of programs would you suggest? Central level.
So yeah, they are. So they are kind of, while their potential is their performance is good, their potential is also mid level. So chances are that probably they are going to take a longer time than your top talent. So therefore these are people who you need to invest in, but the timeline that you look at for growth for these profiles, that probably is going to be slightly extended, but they need all the support that the organization can give them, the opportunities, and so they are the slow and steady sort of profiles who may not be as fast as your top talents, but they are definitely an asset for the organization, and they are pretty competent. Maybe some of them can grow into stronger individual contributor roles. They may not really scale up to handle larger responsibilities, but they can be more specialists. Like for example, you come across many profiles uh, who are not able to grow vertically, but
Right.
they do their existing jobs very well. So you want to retain them at the same time, because year on year people get more expensive. So you probably want to expand their individual contribution.
Yeah, because this is the block where, like you're rightly saying, traditionally long period in one particular role, and typically their training needs would come like, which really annoys me, like an English communication development or something like that. So
Yeah,
that's one group which really needs to focus on how to nudge them forward.
yeah,
Yeah,
And
you're
actually,
right. They also
becomes a
need
bit
some nudging at times. They're not
mm,
very ambitious also, as
yeah,
compared to
yeah.
the people who are higher on potential.
Hmm.
So, so therefore, the organization also needs to push them to sometimes.
Right.
yeah, these people become resistant to change also. They become rigid also sometimes.
Yes, you're right. And if they are not handled properly, then what happens is, they start regressing. Their performance starts dipping, and their potential, of course, is something which is already there. So which probably does not potential generally doesn't grow. Potential is something that people come with, and if the performance dips, then overall they start sliding.
Yeah. In fact, we have learned from in recent past also. There's in a particular department for us, ocean freight. There are like due to COVID, unfortunately, one, two, and third level, the team managers had to could not work, and then exposes the quality of the team down the line. And while the regular processes were managed by them, but when it came to client interaction and such, a lot of pressure then increase on the top leaders to handle that rather than them taking over. So this is something which is coming up now that we have seen, and it's a challenge.
Yes, it's a very good
Yeah.
observation. During a crisis situation, what happens? Two of uh, the situations can prevail. One is that the people who are down below, they scale up quickly and take up higher responsibilities, or they collapse, and people who are there on top, their responsibility increases because their backend is not able to scale up and grow to the challenges. So I guess the second situation happened in your case. In many cases, you have the solid contributors, or the better players at the back end scaling up quickly and doing a stellar job.
Right.
So both ways, it can go both ways during a crisis.
Mhm.
So it's really a crisis which tells you that how what is the potential within the organization.
Right. Yeah.
And it also happens at times, particularly like in some organization, in some industries, the structure is pyramidal. It's like a pyramid everywhere. But in software and BPO and manufacturing, it tends to be more of a pyramid because at the lower end you have huge number of programmers or call center advisors, and then the opportunities start shrinking as you go higher. So very often what happens is people are not able to grow to the smaller number of positions, and then gradually people need to fade out. You may have seen about 2 years ago, some software companies, Wipro, Cognizant, IBM, they weeded out a large number of people who were very good programmers, but they had not grown for 8 years. So Wipro had this criteria that they should be 8 years. If they had not got a promotion in 8 years, then they were expensive resources who were not adding value, and they were weeded out.
And in fact, the performance appraisals also would be a challenge, I guess, coming up, because many of the silent members, what actually happened behind in this 6 months, that's slowly tumbling out. But I can see is going to be a challenge, which is coming up next month
Yeah,
or this year, the mapping of the performance for this year.
right, right. It would be very challenging this year because I think everybody's been shaken up from their comfort zones,
Yeah,
and a few have performed exceedingly well, while the
mm,
majority have uh, not really been able to scale up.
right.
Okay, so some important callouts. Generally, good TM strategies are company specific. They should not be generic. Every company is different in its own way. So for example, I mean, for that matter, not just talent management, I would say that your L&D strategy, your talent management, your HR strategy, your go to market strategy, everything needs to be customized for the specific challenges that the organization is facing. It should not be generic. Talent identification should be result of careful planning and mature workforce. As we were saying, that it should be transparent, it should be process driven, it should be open as much as possible. Development interventions need to be tailored to individual requirements. It's good to have robust individual development plans or IDPs. Those are also tools which TM can use. Then successful programs ensure that each individual has a personalized plan, and a very important output of good talent management practices is succession planning. So right talent pool should be identified as successors for all the key positions in a company, and career development and talent management need to be aligned for the individuals who are identified as successors. So that is very important. And I was, reading about a story where a very large bank lost its CEO, who moved on to another organization. And most of the banks, they are listed companies, they are in the news, and to lose your CEO and not to have somebody in place quickly was a major blow to the company. So succession planning is an important output of talent management, and the kind of succession planning that you have, that is a reflection on what kind of TM practices you have in your organization. Okay, so let's look at some small talent management strategies. So first is G3 alignment. So this is basically taken from the McKinsey quarterly article, and these are some of the practices they recommend. So have a better alignment between G3, which is your CEO, CFO, and CHRO. So at times business challenges happen because there is a gap between the leadership, and if they are able to align better, then chances are that you will have an organization which is well aligned in terms of its HR and business practices. Cultivate the critical 2%. Now, here, what we are saying again, like we talked about the Pareto earlier, Pallavi also shared. So, a small number of people create exponential value. So, these the small number of people need to be identified, nurtured, and grown. And important thing to remember is that they operate at every level. So, it's not necessarily that we have to focus only on the very critical top 2% among senior people. At every level, you have a Pareto happening. So, is your talent management aware of the high potentials in at every level? So that is important that you have a if you have an organization wide talent management strategy, then these people need to figure in that strategy. Next is focus the board on talent. So the board should be part of the talent strategy. At times, it so happens that the board is focused more on operational details and not that much on strategy. And the CHRO is kind of somebody who just sits through quietly in meetings and doesn't really contribute much. So that should not be the case. The CHRO should have regular interaction with the board, with the decision makers in a company. Um, One of the companies I worked for, the CHRO made a presentation to the board maybe only once a year, while the board met monthly, but the HR presentation was only once a year. So, which was unfortunate because that showed that they were not that that gung ho on talent development, and other things were bigger priorities for them. uh, Make people decisions based on data. So this is very important that HR analytics needs to be insightful, and it is definitely a more useful tool than intuition. So deploy data to make smart people decisions. This is very, very critical. Do not go by gut feel. Do not you know uh, take decisions on a whim, but it should be based on hardcore data. Treat HR as a strategic partner. So that's something we discussed earlier. HR has to be on the table, and the CHRO has to be an active member of the leadership. So convert the HRBP toward talent value partners by allocating them performance responsibility. So very often at the lower level, what happens is the HR business partner is just focused on controlling attrition or doing few transactional activities. They should see themselves as value partners, as ensuring business value on various dimensions, and not just focused on retaining talent and controlling attrition. So that's very critical. Uh, Sorry, this is come again. So give employees the skills they need. So now increasingly what you're discovering is that you have multiple new kind of portfolios opening up. So you have machine learning, you have AI, you have so many different kinds of skill sets that are opening up. And do you have the support mechanism for these new skill sets? So many Gen X, Gen Z jobs do not exist right now, but you have to ensure that your organization is equipped to handle the change when it comes. So are you making people future ready? That is something that you need to ask yourself. Are people future ready or not? So it's not just about one particular skill or two particular skills, but basically an orientation towards a new set of skills. That is something which is required. And so can you embed AI in some of the work that you do? Or you know are you factoring in IoT in some of your operations? For example, uh, many HRMS systems have included IoT. So you have attendance systems, you have tracking mechanisms of your sales personnel. Those are based on IoT technology. So including these skills, creating a learning path for these skills, those are very, very important. Uh, so next is dealing with talent shortages by scanning industries for the right talent to improve your talent base. So it should not so happen, as we have been discussing, that suddenly your top talent goes missing and you don't have a plan B in place. So it's important to have a plan B in place and be ready for eventualities where suddenly you may be missing out on key talent. So it's important that you are ready for that with a succession plan, which is internal, and also a talent acquisition strategy, which may be looking at external talent. So those are some important pieces of TM strategy that are there. So any thoughts on these observations?
Or the point on the multi-generational talent, the Gen Z, what kind of upskilling would be needed going forward apart from AI, of course, enabled systems, but what else? Because cultural shift is definitely having happening. In going forward, how can we put all these multi-generational teams in a common strategy that would enable their better interaction? Because I see we have a lot of people who are retiring in the organization, and uh, an influx of a lot of younger team members. So ideally, what kind of a strategy should be in place so that there's mentoring and reverse mentoring and both happens seamlessly?
Great question, Arpita. So yeah, you're right that you have uh, you know uh, a new generation, the Generation Z, and millennials coming into the organization, and there are various kinds of observations being made about millennials as compared to the older generations. Uh, the organization definitely needs to have some sort of a hand-holding strategy where they are familiarized with the organizational culture, the needs of the organization, and also maybe mentoring is something that you may want to reserve for higher levels, but even at an entry level, some sort of a acclimatization program where they are made aware of the business challenges, how to deal with those challenges, some of the behavioral dimensions of um, of you know so I'm not sure. There are a lot of observations about millennial cultural traits, which is lower attention span, lower level of patience, etc. I don't know how true
Even, I
those are.
mean, I don't see them getting long service awards for sure. I mean, they keep moving from one place to another. I guess even attracting and keeping them on board for 5 years is a big ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things where you need to have a higher level of sensitization, and maybe entire HR needs to be reinvented, because
Hmm.
you have a totally different challenge on hand as compared to the earlier challenge where we just talked about attrition control. Now it needs to be a severely proactive retention. And how do you do that? So therefore, I think a lot of out of box thinking required over here, but definitely a very strong sensitization program and a culturation program where they are able to understand the culture of the organization, the demands of the business, and what is in it for them in the midterm and in the longer term, so that they see a wider horizon.
Plus, the Gen X leaders need to be also sensitized towards how to handle them. Uh, you know.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. It is at both ends. Even the existing leadership, they also need to understand that the challenges are changing dramatically. Earlier, the change used to happen, generation was supposed to be 30 years, and changes happened in 30 years.
Mm.
And now it is happening every 5 years. And now the time horizon is shrinking even further. So the existing leadership also needs to be sensitized on this.
Right.
So it's a huge shift at the workplace that is probably taking place, and not all of us are really well armed. Forget about being well armed. We are not even aware of um, the challenges that are probably coming up. Okay, so what we'll do is, take just go through this. What are the key? Just one second. I'll just open this document. So you can see it's a talent management plan template, and what are the organizational goals and talent implications. So you can think of, 2 or 3 business imperatives, that these are the business goals, and then just put in the talent implications for each of those goals. Okay, so just off the cuff, think of 2 or 3 business goals, and what would be the talent implication. Okay, if you have pen and paper, or if you just want to jot down on your mobiles, you can do that. Just put in, uh, let's say, 3 business goals, and what are the talent implications for each of those goals. You have solid 5 minutes to do it. Okay, anybody would like to share?
Yeah, I'm Vivek. I would like to share one thing which came to my mind.
Yes, Vivek, go
As
ahead.
especially in pharmaceutical, suppose I am already maybe in the gastrointestinal segment or the oncology segment, but in this post-COVID scenario, if I am planning to launch a vaccine or I have a tie-up with a company who is bringing in a COVID vaccine, so what I need to do is I need to bring in people who are already working in the segment, in this vaccine segment, and also I need to train the existing sales force in selling and the knowledge of vaccines.
Yes, absolutely. So you are in Pfizer, right, Vikram?
I was actually.
Okay. So yes, in this new scenario, and let's say an organization, be it Moderna or Pfizer, I think for them the priorities are going to change significantly, given that good percentage of their revenue probably is now going to come from this particular vaccine.
Yeah.
So
So that segment
therefore,
has to be
they need
strengthened.
to. Sorry.
This vaccine segment has to be strengthened for them, which is now
Yes. Yes.
non-existent, maybe, or very minuscule.
Exactly, exactly. Now suddenly one line of business is going to grow exponentially, while the others probably may even shrink because so much attention is now on COVID-19 as compared to the other illnesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's a very good example of how business priorities will translate into talent priorities. Great, thanks,
Yeah.
Vikram. Anybody else would like
Yeah,
to share?
I would want to share. One is a point which is related to Vivek's, because supply chain, our focus is on building robust cold storage warehouse and trucking, because we are expecting a robust business with the distribution channels opening up. So acquisition has already happened for us. Even life sciences has become a core focus product from the last 1 year. And the challenge now is on grooming this team, and one or two are also undergoing specialized coaching. So both development from internal team, the team who is to report to the new leader who's joined, that aspect is on. So talent acquisition and development both. Another is a phase two of a software which was rolled out. It's a global software. 2 years back, it is rolled out. The phase two is about to go live Jan 21. So audits are happening and certain gaps are coming out in terms of the execution. So course correction, training, and of course recognition for the teams who are doing well, the project managers. That's where that again the TM part comes in. And the third is post, I mean, 2021 mid, when things will be hopefully more opening up. The even the motivation levels, I mean, right now we are 30% working from office, but that equation will change later. So how the teams cope up with that, what kind of new roles can come up with certain members who can continue working from home, how to map the performance. Certain changes will need to be done, even in terms of flexibility in policies which has happened. There has to be again a shift in 2021. So these are definitely challenges which will come, which the talent management team will have to look into.
Yeah, great. Those are a very good set of changes in direction
Mm.
and therefore significant implications on the team strategy.
Right.
Great, Arpita, thanks for those inputs. So we will close today, and thanks for logging in on time. So looking forward to catching up next week, same time.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks. Have a
Yeah,
great
Thank you.
week
Thank you so
definitely.
ahead.
much.
Thank you.